And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is the Reverend Sue Frederick, Sacred Numerology channeler, whose work is inspired by 3 shared death experiences as well as guidance received from the angelic realms and during her out-of-body visions. Sue, welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, Sue, let's jump right into it. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen in 2025. So what can you tell us?
Well, as you know, I'm a numerologist, and the basic fact of numerology is that you add everything, every number together and digit it down to a single number. So when you do that to 2025, you end up with a number 9. And 9 in numerology is the number of endings, of surrender, of letting go. It's also considered kind of in the Hindu tradition, they would talk about Shiva as the great destroyer of what needs to be let go of. The 9 affects all of us in a way of purging the old. So you can think of 2025 for this world, for our country especially, is a year of going into the closet and throwing out what no longer fits us, what no longer serves us, and not really knowing what's coming next. And that's the part of the 9 that's so tricky for humans, because we like to feel in control and like we know what's coming next. But the trick of the 9 universal year is that it's a big question mark. We know what we're having to let go of. There will be purging of old ideas, of old beliefs this year. There will be events that happen on the planet that shift and change the way we view our lives, our daily lives. And yet we're not going to really understand what the new world is meant to be until we're into 2026. Does that make sense, Jeff?
It does. Let me ask you this. Does the date when the world changes over matter that much? And what I'm trying to ask is, do we still have any effects lingering over from the end of 2024?
So it's like a wave, when we think of this end of the 8 year of 2024 and the beginning of the 9 year, it's not like one night it just all changes. It's more like a wave of energy shifting. And so, for example, in your own personal year cycles, in my own personal year cycles, and the listeners, we have 9-year cycles of reinvention. And if anybody's listening and they want to know what year they are in, they can go to my website and go to my Soul Path Calculator. It's free, and just input their birth date and they'll get all this information. And my website is just suefrederick.com. So when you do that, you see that you have had 9-year reinvention cycles that started at different times, depending on when you're born. And when you've hit a 9-year in your personal life, it might have meant a divorce or end of a career the way that you had depended on a certain career. It ended. Maybe you got fired. Maybe a relationship you cared about came to an end, or you had a devastating grief experience. When you go back and look at your own life, you see that, yeah, those 9 years were kind of kicked my butt. But when the new cycle started, it was a new and better trajectory for my life. But I had to let go of some old parts of myself and old ideas. Now magnify that by 1,000,000 billion to get it to the universal 9 year of 2025. And you'll see that we're all collectively being asked to let go of how we see our life on Earth. Now, I know you have a lot of guests who come who talk about the interplanetary beings from other galaxies and what they have to say about all this. And of course, we don't know when full disclosure will happen, but certainly what's going to be ripped away in 2025 is any kind of illusion that we are the only form of life in the galaxies. That illusion has been shredded, but now it finally gets ripped away. And so you can think of it as, if you're clinging to an old idea of human life on Earth, that is going to change, and you're going to have to open your mind. So I would say the biggest lesson for us all in 2025 is we have to let go of what we trust and believe to be true and surrender to the unknown, which is so hard for humans. We love to feel in control. And then on a personal note, the angels say that there's an interplay happening between this ending of the universal nine and our own personal energy and how it's going to interact with that. And what that means is if I go into this year with my heart open, knowing there'll be change, ready to work with that energy of change and refusing to drop into the fear, the blame, all that stuff, then I'm going to do better moving through this time period than somebody who's going, no, we have to go, rigidly into it without any change, and I refuse to change. Those people are going to struggle with it more. But I want to say to all the listeners, we're all here intentionally at this time period right now. So if you're incarnated, you're alive, you're here now, it means your soul agreed to be here for this big shift of consciousness, which also means you are here powerful and strong enough to move through it and have a better life on the other side of it, or you wouldn't have agreed to incarnate now.
So I guess everybody needs to buckle up and get prepared.
It's like getting on the roller coaster, you just, once you're in the seat and the seat belt is on, you got to let go of control or how you want it to go and just put your hands up in the air and enjoy the ride. And the other thing I'll say is there's never going to be an end of the world the way we've been sort of taught or programmed could happen, because the higher galaxies will not let us blow up the Earth. The Earth is a very important part of the whole system of incarnation and growth.
Well, you mentioned something earlier about Shiva and destruction. And if this year is the year of destruction, does that mean that we are just going to blow up a lot of our old habits and ways of living?
So that's the good thing about the nine, is if there are things in our personal lives that we want to let go of, maybe it's a toxic relationship, a toxic career, a toxic relationship with money, politics, all of that. The energy of this year is going to stir it all up so much that, yeah, we can just let it go and be a whole new person by 2026 and moving forward into that new cycle. I even have friends who are telling me that they're giving up alcohol and addictions like that, and they're finding it easier to do that because of this energy of change that they're feeling in the world. So take advantage of the idea that it's time to clean out your personal closet and let go of what doesn't serve you, what doesn't work for you, because what's happening in the world right now is going to shake everyone up to their core. There's no winners in this who get to say, yeah, this is what I thought would happen, because the nine says you can't see what's coming. You just have to let go of what you think you need in order to be happy and let it all change for you.
Besides letting go and being open-minded and accepting of change, what else should we do to prepare for this year?
Well, there's I made a little reference card about all the past 9 universal years we've gone through and how they've shaken us up. And I think as I talk about those, you kind of get an idea, but this one will be the strongest one yet. But if we go back to the last 9 universal year, it was 2016, the year that Donald Trump was elected president and came on the scene seriously in 2016, which became a different conversation than we'd ever had before in our country and in politics. And I'm not putting a good or a bad label to that. I'm just saying that shook everything up. That was a 9 universal year. And then the next year, 2017, was the beginning of a new cycle. That's the cycle we're now finishing in this 9 year. So you can go back to your life in 2017 and see where you were, how life was treating you, what you believed in, and look at your life now and see everything that's happened since then, and know that you're at a new shift part of it where it's going to be a completely new cycle, and your life is going to be very different starting next year. So what are you letting go of? Well, whatever you've been holding on to since 2017. And then we go back. Do you remember 2007, 2008, the mortgage crash? A lot of people lost their homes back then, even lost their savings. 2007 and 8, that was a 9-year turning point for the universe as well. 1998, that was the dot-com crash, because I was working for a big VP of content for a health.com, and they all went under in 1999, and it was a shift of the world as we knew it. That was a 9-year universal year. And before that, this is the last one I'll talk about, but 1989 was really the launching of the World Wide Web. Can you imagine life before the World Wide Web? Well, 1989 was a 9 universal year that ended that kind of life and started our life on the internet. So those are the kind of big shifts. So when we add to that mix and say, so will we be saying that 2025 is the year that the ETs finally gave us full disclosure and rocked our world completely? Well, it seems very, very possible, and yes. But I'll also say that there's an interplay here between our consciousness and these events. And so what I mean by that is, if humanity is in a collective state of fear and not ready to go into that new world, the other beings from other galaxies are aware of not destroying our planet. So there will be some interplays about whether it happens or not, depending on our collective consciousness here on Earth being ready. So what I say to everybody is, you got to live from your heart. You can't live in fear. Be open to change, because change in the long run always helps us evolve and have better lives. So follow that light, of love, of looking for the angelic guidance. Whenever we hit a very difficult time in our personal lives, there are always divine beings helping us and lifting us through them. But we have to say, yes, I accept that help. Yes, lift me up, angels. Yes, lift me up, divine beings, and help me move through that. That needs to be our prayer as we move into this 9 universal year. The guides, the spirits, the angels, they want to help us, but we have to ask for that. So when you ask me what should we prepare moving into this year, I would say every single person needs to be very clear that when they're afraid, when they don't know what to do, the answer is shifting into the invisible realms and asking for help from there. And I go to the angels, the angelic realm, and I say, please, divine beings, lift me up above this pain, above this confusion, above this grief. And they are right there, because they're our first responders on Earth. They come right to lift us up. They can't interfere, but they are here to help us when we ask for that help. And they're available 24/7.
Have you been able to make any sense of all these drone sightings?
I've heard and felt from the angels that it's a mixed bag of what's happening. It's really about preparing humans for things out of the ordinary to happen. But whether or not the drones are human-made or having to do with other galaxies, it feels like they're human-made, but they're trying to show us something. And I think in a way we're not getting the message. It feels to me like they're going, come on, there's a different reality here that we all have to be aware of. And so we're not really paying attention. So now there will be something else that happens that's going to be more soul awakening, we could say.
What else have the angels revealed to you?
There are things about money coming up in this year, and what I've been told is the old way of making money, especially with career and work, is going to shift for so many people, and it's going to scare them. I'm talking about the people who've always relied on that job, that paycheck, that regular kind of just go to work and clock out at 5 o'clock. That paradigm on Earth is changing completely. And it'll be a combination of the artificial intelligence coming in and taking over those jobs, and the higher shift of consciousness saying, wake up, people, you're here to do more than just be a cog in the wheel. You're each conscious beings, and you're here with a great gift to share with the world. We're being asked to do that, to share our gifts and our truth and live at a higher frequency than humans have been used to living. And so for me, that's been a lot of health issues. Just my body's been kind of moving up to a higher frequency. I think everybody feels that in some way, because we're trying to lift our frequency to be more in alignment with the higher beings who are coming into our consciousness in this new cycle.
How can people connect directly themselves with angels?
It's so easy, Jeff, and I teach an angelic ministry class. It's kind of ongoing. You can find it on my website, and it starts again in February. And in this class, I take people into these conversations with their angelic guides, angelic beings. Everyone feels that. And even right now, if everybody just close your eyes for a moment.
1 second, Sue. Just to let everybody know, if you're driving a vehicle or operating heavy machinery, pause the video, come back later and do this.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. So when you're in not driving and you're in a safe place, I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath, put your hand on your heart chakra and inhale deeply. And as you inhale, feel your energy, attention going upwards. And now say, please, divine angelic realm, lift up my consciousness. Help me to be aware of the invisible realms. Help me to feel the love from the higher beings, especially the angels in the angelic realm. Help me feel that right now. Take a breath. And I instantly, because I've done this so much, I instantly feel a shift of my energy when this happens. And then the more attuned you get, the more you can hear their voices talking to you and comforting you. And it's a feeling of being hugged. I mean, the angels are very visceral. They will give you a feeling of being hugged. And if you're out in the world in a dangerous situation, and you call on the angels, they may even take an appearance as a human being standing beside you, helping you. And then you turn your head and you look back and they're gone. That was an angel taking form to help you. So I would say to everybody in this year of 2025, when you have a problem, you're scared, you're afraid, something's changing in your life, you're in trouble, go right to the angels, ask for that help. Their job is to lift us up and comfort us and love on us so that we can fulfill our soul missions here on earth.
Was it you that encountered an angel in real life at one time?
I've had several come into my life in many times of my journey, and rock climbing, for example, when I should have died, and the rock and the rope magically wrapped itself around an outcrop and stopped. And when my husband Paul died, there were many angels around me helping me. It's been such a constant thing in my life. That's why I love teaching people now how to feel that angelic presence. But for the next decade, the next cycle of humanity, Jeff, we're being asked, those of us who are awakened, to step up and be angelic beings for each other. We each have an angelic part of ourselves that we can rise up into to help our neighbor, help our friend. I was talking to people who were part of the hurricane in North Carolina. I have a nephew who was in Asheville. I think that was where the town was that was hit. And he was telling me, yes, there was a lot of pain and a lot of tragedy and flooding everywhere, but angels were everywhere. You know, there were just people being suddenly miraculously saved from a desperate situation by other people who looked and appeared to be human and then were sort of gone at the next glance. So be aware that those kinds of beings do step in to help us. And that the light, like I've always said, this vision behind me from 2014, the light always is stronger and wins over the darkness. I know humans love to get down in that darkness and believe it's the end of the world, but the light really does overcome it because darkness is simply the absence of light. So in 2025, we get to be the light, Jeff. Each of us get to choose that. You know, I had my own sort of near-death experience, out-of-body experience last spring when I was sick, and I'm all better. But in that, I was shown how vivid and up close my departed father, my departed husband, the angelic beings, they carried me through that entire experience. And all of us have moments of crisis. Trust, look to the invisible first rather than to the physical and the human and the mundane, and you'll feel that support, and then you can follow what they tell you to do. So, for example, if something doesn't feel good, you have to make a choice this year, and it doesn't feel good, the choice you have to make, ask the angels to show you a different choice that carries more light, more love, more possibility, and they will be right there with that for you.
Sue, some people believe that angels are ETs. And
I know,
I
I know
guess it could
people
be
believe
just,
that.
yeah, and I guess it could be just a matter of perspective or perception. What is your take?
So my take on it is that the other galaxy beings are still part of our divine universe, all under the guidance of a loving force that we can call the force or the God source, which is a force of unconditional love and light that runs this universe and runs through all of us, no matter what galaxy we live in, no matter what shape our physical body takes. We are all part of this consciousness. So it's funny that humans want to look at the ETs and think that they are God, you know, they're angels. No, consciousness is so much greater than that, so much vaster than that. So actually, the angels are the highest beings up by the God source. And the God source is not a person, it is a source of light and love that runs this universe. And the angels are part of that energy. They come down to earth to help us, but they don't really stay in the earth realm. They don't incarnate here. So we can call on them to help us. And I think it's a very sad thing that so many humans are now believing that these ETs are, you know, more powerful spiritually than God or that angels. That isn't true. They're still part of this universe that is run by the God source, the force of love.
Since it's a 9 year, will the ninth month, September, be extra special?
Oh, yeah. Extra special. So I would say that, you know, whether we're talking full disclosure from the other galaxies or whether we're talking of certain parts of our society that we depend on, September is the month when these things culminate because it's a 9 month in a 9 universal year. So look to September. And again, when people talk about being prepared, be prepared by being in touch with your intuition, in touch with the lights of the higher beings that can guide you. And the numbers even show you how to do that. So if you know what your birth path, your soul mission is, and again, you can go to my website and do the calculator and know that. So for example, I know what your path number is, Jeff, and so I know that your way through this year is by analyzing it and thinking about it and dissecting it. That's what your path number leads you to do and kind of helps you get through things. Mine is different. My path is the 22, and that means I have to be working and helping, somehow teaching all of this stuff as I move through this year, that's my job moving through this. Everybody is on a different path, a different number, a different soul mission. And so they have a different way of moving through this 9 universal year. And so if you're on the one path, for example, you've got to be a leader now. This is your time to step up and be a visionary leader. And I could spend all day talking about that. If people are on a 2 path or a 3 path or a 4, how do they move through this? But I want to say to anyone who is in a 9 life path, and you can find that out on my soul path calculator, then this is a year for you. That'll be most powerful year of your life, a 9 universal year and a 9 personal year for you. It means you will be a completely reborn, different human being next year. And that could be challenging, painful, but in the end, it will be better and new and stronger.
Now, one's number is calculated by adding the days of their birth, month, day, and year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also create a number out of somebody's name? Let's say
Yes.
Sue Frederick, you give, I guess, the number it is in the alphabet for each letter and add it all up?
And if people go to my soul path calculator and they click on the bottom of the page, level 2, they get to the pinnacles, figuring out their pinnacles, and level 3 then shows them how to do their name. And the name is very fun because you can actually change the vibration that you go through life with by changing your name. So I was born with a different last name. And when I married my husband, Paul Frederick, when I was in my 20s, that name always felt like, oh, that's the name I've looked for. That's my real name, my soul name. And so even though Paul died and was widowed and married, I've always kept that name, Sue Frederick, because Paul gave it to me. It was one of his spiritual gifts in my life. And also, it carries the frequency of my work, and I can play all that out in the numbers. So, if I've worked with so many clients who say, if I change my name to this, how will it feel and how will it feel? So, go play with that in my soul path calculator, and you can see what numbers feel right with changing your name.
I'm not sure what your birth name is, but let's say it's Susan. Could you run the numbers for Susan Frederick versus Sue Frederick? And if it's better, you would use Sue over Susan?
Yeah, but it's not Susan. I'll just say that. My birth name is Sue Ellen, which go figure.
The last Sue Ellen I know of is the character on Dallas.
Right, exactly. And wasn't she sweet, So, yeah, so you can run those numbers, but also people can even feel in their intuition, what's the vibration of saying Sue Ellen versus saying Sue Frederick, And we all can feel what's right, but also if you go and calculate it in my calculator, you'll see that, of course, I made the right choice by using Paul's name and being Sue Frederick, and that eases my way through life in a way that my birth name did not. But I'll also say that the soul mission we're on that comes from our date of birth, by calculating all those numbers, that gives us a compass for how we're supposed to move through our lifetime. What life plan did we create for this life? That's all laid out in your soul mission. So you can see, for example, I'm a 22/4 Virgo sun sign. That means I was going to come in and kind of not believe that the world was where I wanted to be, and I was going to have to seek other answers and other perspectives, and then make my living helping others do the same thing. That's very unique to my path as a Virgo 22. Whereas I have friends who are on the 5 path, which is a very different energy, and it says, I'm just going to live passionately and courageously in my life and learn my lessons through my passion, perhaps through addictions, but it'll all be perfect for what my soul came to learn. Each of us have a path that shows the way through. And that path does not get changed by the universal cycles. So we're still on that path in 2025. That's why it's so important to know your path in 2025 and stick with your tools, your gifts, your way of moving forward as you've done in your life, because this is the time more than ever where you're being asked to step up to your greatest self and help be on the side of consciousness evolving into the good stuff rather than self-destructing.
You said you are a Virgo 22. So are you saying it's good to
Mhm.
complement your numerology number with your horoscope?
Well, I blend the sign with the birth path. That's part of my sacred numerology, and I have a workbook on Amazon, Sacred Numerology, that shows you how to do that, because the fact that I have the Virgo sun sign means that I did bring that analytical piece into my work, into my path. That's part of the Virgo. Whereas I have a friend who's a Pisces 22. It's a very different energy. She brings in a lot more spiritual connection, emotional depth. And yet I'm the one who writes 11 books because I have that Virgo part of me. So, yeah, the sun sign adds a nice flavor of how we're going to walk our soul path. And I teach that in my numerology classes. I have another online numerology class coming up in January. And people really enjoy that because it's a different approach. Um, and I could look at your path, for example, and tell you, merging it with your sun sign, how that means you're going to walk through this. And I work with clients every day, and this is what we do. We look at their soul mission, how they've moved through their 9-year reinvention cycles, what's coming for them in their new cycle of their life moving forward, and what their name frequency is about if they're wanting to change that, and what their soul agreements are with their loved ones. That's one of the most helpful parts of numerology. Is my husband, for example, is a Sagittarius 7 path, and I'm the Virgo 22, which is based in the number 4. You add our two paths together, you get our soul agreement, which is the sacred number 11. So that means we're always intuitively connected, for better or worse. It's sometimes married couples don't want to be intuitively connected because when you're mad at each other, you don't have to say a word, you can feel it. But when you know that soul agreement with somebody, even with your children, with your parents, with your boss, with the coworkers, wow, it shows you how to navigate that relationship in a very productive, helpful way rather than trying to make something work in a way that it'll never work. The numbers are so helpful with our soul agreements. And if you've lost someone you love, I work with so many grieving people, especially grieving parents, and they have lost children. Children have crossed into spirit, but that soul agreement still stands. So that helps them know how to connect with their departed child when they look at that soul agreement energy. And I do online group readings where I'll say, you're the Sagittarius 7 path. Here's what your path is about. Here's what you've come to do and learn. And I just pour that information out for them. That's what I've been doing since 1980 when I started studying the numbers.
I want to check in with you on something. You're calling yourself a Virgo 22. Why don't you reduce it down to a 4?
See, that's a good question, because in numerology, there are 3 sacred numbers, 11, 22, and 33. And so the way I've learned from the numbers and from being trained, even by conversations with Pythagoras and spirit and with other spiritual teachers who've helped me understand the nuances of numerology, that when you look at that master soul number, if it shows up one out of the 3 ways I teach to add that birth date, and that's why my soul path calculator is helpful, because it is the only one that adds the birthday the 3 different ways and shows you. And if that master soul number shows up one out of those 3 ways, it means your soul chose to come in on a master soul path, which means it's an accelerated learning lifetime. And I laugh because that doesn't mean it's going to be a party. That means you agreed to a lot of growth and a lot of learning, and then the ability to turn around and help so many people. That's what the Master Soul Paths are all about.
Hmm. All right. That was
But it's
good.
still based in a single digit number. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a 4 plus.
So, yeah. So, for example, the 4 is always a part of my path because it digits down to the 4. But my soul came to move from that 4, very practical, very hardworking, all about strength, into the higher frequency of the 22, which is bringing consciousness, new ideas that help shift our awareness. So you can even watch that trajectory in my life, starting out as a mountain climber and rock climber and physical fitness instructor, and moving all the way to numerologist and spiritual coach and ordained minister and all of that. So I've moved on that arc of learning from the 4 to the 22.
A lot of stuff's been going on, obviously, with Russia and Ukraine. Do you think that we could ever get to World War III?
Blowing ourselves up. That's been the topic of conversation for so many decades. And the higher galaxy beings, the Pleiadians and various other beings, will not let Earth blow itself up because Earth is needed in the bigger picture of the galaxy for our soul evolution. It offers very important opportunities for soul growth. And so this planet will always be here. It will always exist. And if we get to that point of being on the edge of nuclear destruction, then they will definitely step in, full disclosure time. They will not let that happen. And there's so much evidence if you go back in history and see, Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that, when we were on the brink of things. Those nuclear silos would suddenly lose their power. And there's so many reports about that. That's the ETs keeping us from blowing ourselves up and showing us that they have control of these things and they won't let us destroy ourselves. I think we should all be quite happy about that because humans are not making great choices at the moment. And the other thing I'll say is there's never going to be an end of the world the way we've been sort of taught or programmed could happen because the higher galaxies will not let us blow up the Earth. The Earth is a very important part of the whole system of incarnation and growth.
Sue, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Yes, and they can go to SueFrederick.com. I really urge them to do my soul path calculator. And my email address is there as well. And they can message me through my booking calendar. They can click into the booking calendar. And I hope they'll also take my numerology class online in January or get a group reading because I do group numerology readings that are so fun. So, Jeff, just imagine if you were here with 9 other people and I was just going around each person going, here's what you came to do. Here's what you came to be. This is where you are in your reinventions. And everyone just loves it because they're kind of learning by hearing what other people are going through. So I do that every month. And then my angelic ministry. If you're looking for a way to get through this coming year in more light and higher frequency than fear, then you want to sign up to learn some of these practices I'm teaching in the angelic ministry classes.
Is there anything else you're working on that you want people to know about?
I am halfway through a book of channeled messages from the angelic realm, and I can't wait. That hopefully will be out in the next year.
Wow, great. Well, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
You are each responsible for the interplay of light and dark in your own life and also contributing to the greater good, the higher good of all of the collective. So ask yourself, am I carrying more light and love in my heart or darkness and fear? Because it will affect your life, but it will also affect the collective. Yes, we are all connected. Your fear and pain hurts somebody else as well, whereas your love and gratitude and goodness lifts up and helps others.
Sue, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest again.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.